Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Baseline Drives podcast. My name is Gary Lee. I am a writer at theathleteshub.org. And today, the future, and hopefully for forever, I will be creating a podcast for you, the fan of basketball. Not just NBA, but hopefully over the course of March Madness, the WNBA Finals, and really the entire season of everything. I hope to be the guy to bring you the news, the opinions, and mostly facts. Now, I know what you're probably thinking to yourself. Wow, another guy with a sports podcast. Is he being original? No. But I hope to be sincere. I hope to be honest. I hope to be light, funny, but also serious when it needs to be. I'm not trying to create something new or reinvent the wheel here. Just trying to share my opinions, voice my voice, and voice other voices. I'd like in the future to have guests on this podcast, but for now, it'll be just me rambling, talking, and pretty much speaking incoherently about how much I love the NBA, basketball, and yeah, you will hear a little gushing about the Miami Heat. But who doesn't love their favorite sports team? I've been a Heat fan since '06, and I'm not going to stop now. Just like Bill Simmons. Pretty much every podcast will ramble on about the 1986 Celtics while his guest sits there, most likely having never watched Larry Bird and most likely sleeping through most of the conversation. But he has millions of viewers every week, so he must be doing something right. And I mean, can you really change a man? Can you really change the fact that I've been watching basketball, specifically Dwayne Wade highlights, since I was 7 years old? You can't. Just like you can't change Ben Simmons not being able to shoot a basketball. I mean, maybe he can. Maybe he's just hiding it in his little bag of tricks somewhere deep down, making Brett Brown and Doc Rivers and Daryl Morey all scream collectively while they sop up the tears from their multi-million-dollar contracts and extensions, while you waste your hard-earned money screaming at your TV, praying that one day Ben Simmons can hit a 15-footer. It's not going to happen. Stop. Just quit. Players are who they are. But that is another topic for another day. We have basketball to get to. We have sports to talk about. And the first game, well, the only game tonight, is Clippers-Suns Game 3, a game where we saw Chris Paul and Devin Booker basically get shut down completely by the Clippers defense. Great adjustments by Ty Lue. One of the things I think he doesn't get enough credit for, to be real honest. Ty has almost an innate sense on in-game and pre-game and mid-game adjustments. You watched it with the Cavs. You watched him completely change the way that they played offense and defense those last 3 games. And at first we all thought it was LeBron, but did we ever come to think that maybe it was Ty Lue? And maybe Ty Lue and the brain trust over there in Cleveland, that coaching staff that honestly overperformed for the team that they had. Now, I'm not saying that LeBron and Kyrie and Kevin Love were some sort of, run-of-the-mill players, but I sat on my couch for almost a week basically saying that, the Cavs are done, the Cavs are gassed, there's no way that they win this series. Okay, LeBron and Kyrie put up 40, but there's no way that they could do it multiple games in a row. And they did. They literally came back 3-1 in the NBA Finals, and I don't think we give enough credit to Ty Lue. With 4 games potentially left in this series to go, we have to ask ourselves a couple of questions. I mean, it's impossible not to sit down on your couch every night that you watch this game and not think, well, wait, maybe Paul George won't show up tonight. Maybe Paul George is going to sit on the ground over by the sidelines and pout. Maybe he's going to sit there and act as if he totally didn't commit that foul when we all know that he did. But he's been playing different lately. I don't know what it was. Maybe something happened or he finally got his ass in gear. But Paul George has been kicking it. He's really looked really good. I don't think that there's another player that we as a media and we as a fan base have collectively just completely destroyed more than Paul George these last 12, 18 months. I mean, from the pandemic P to the terrible, terrible games that he had in the bubble, I've sat on NBA Twitter and watched people just destroy this man. I mean, he had moments where, he was depressed in the bubble too. He talked about it over and over and over again about how his mental health and how the struggles of being away from his family, all of that just weighed on him. And to be fair, it did for everybody. I'm not saying that it's an excuse or that it's something that we can look at and look over and gloss over, but it happened. Paul George completely blew it. But now, less than a year later, Paul George puts up 27, 15, and 8 in the Western Conference Finals. And if the Suns manage to choke this and the Clippers manage to make it to the finals with Kawhi Leonard, who's very injured and might not even come back for this series, we have to give our credit to Paul George. And I know Twitter is going to jump on me for this because they love jumping on anybody who gives Paul George a little bit of credit, but we have to do it. There's no way that you can look at the Clippers season this year and not think that Paul George plays a very large part in getting them to where they are. And to be fair, Kawhi Leonard carried the load of that during the season when he was playing. Now, it's only one game. I'm not going to overreact and say that the Clippers have this series or say that, oh no, just wait, the Suns have this one, they're going to win it. Personally, without Kawhi Leonard, I might seem like a little bit of a Paul George hater here, but I don't see the Clippers winning another 2 games in this series, let alone 3. But I've been wrong before. I literally wrote a article on theathleteshub.org plug that predicted the top 3 playoff upsets in round 1. And guess who got all 3 of them wrong? This guy. So if you're coming to my podcast thinking about getting betting advice, hold back a little bit. I might need a little bit of time to get these right, but I'm doing my best as a man, as a human, and as a person. So bear with me. All right. That's enough talk about the Suns and the Clippers. We have multiple more games to look to see how this series will go, and honestly, I don't think it really gets that interesting until around game 4 or 5. So let's move on. And that brings me on to my next topic, which is coaching. Coaching is literally probably the most important part of an NBA team besides the star players. You can have a group of role guys who are good, are talented, but without the right coach, there's really no way that those guys are all going to get on the same page. I'm not saying that these guys aren't smart enough to do it, because they definitely are. Hell, there are some players that would probably be better off coaching the teams other than the person who is currently holding that head coaching position. My point being is that when you have a bunch of role players on your team, you need them to gel, to know their roles, and to get together with each other and say, hey, somebody on this team is going to have to sacrifice something. And the best coaches out there know exactly how to get that out of their players. We've seen Phil Jackson pretty much coach the 2 hardest to deal with superstars of all time, when Kobe and Shaq, in terms of their gel and how they got together, and he made it work. And that doesn't happen without a solid coach. Solid coaching wins NBA championships. And if you can find me an NBA team that has won a championship without a good coach, I would be pleased to hear what you have to say. And I think that transitions into Jason Kidd being hired to be the Dallas Mavericks head coach. Now, Jason Kidd himself was a very well-respected and well-regarded player during his playing days. Please, for the love of basketball, go on YouTube and watch a YouTube highlight of Jason Kidd absolutely shredding defenses in the early 2000s and late 90s. Absolutely making passes that players today wouldn't even try. Jason Kidd was making some of the craziest routine passes you'd ever seen. I don't remember who it was, but there was a player that he used to play with that joked that Jason Kidd couldn't even make a chest pass because every pass he had to make was just a crazy behind the back wrap around through his legs, through somebody else's legs kind of pass. And he was amazing. But as a coach, Has he ever truly had a successful team? He was the head coach for those Brooklyn Nets teams after the infamous Celtics trade that really underperformed. And maybe it was because the players that he was getting were older, and maybe Darren Williams didn't really try to fit in to be the all-star point guard that they needed. But for whatever reason, it didn't work out. Not only did it not work out, but it didn't work out so bad that the Brooklyn Nets literally traded him away to the Milwaukee Bucks so he didn't have to be their coach anymore. The Milwaukee Bucks were like, hey, we need a coach. We just fired our last guy. Could we maybe get somebody? And the Brooklyn Nets went, hey, here, I've got a guy who we don't want anymore. He's a good coach. Wink, wink. You want him? And the Milwaukee Bucks said, yeah, we've got a star in Giannis who we're trying to build up as our franchise's next big player. And we would love to have a guy like you to come in and make this place a winning culture, just like you did when you joined the Mavs as a point guard, backup point guard, in the 2011 title run. Could you be that as a coach? And the answer was quickly no. Jason Kidd had a weird defensive scheme that, once game planned for, pretty much rendered it useless, and he was definitely a little too stubborn about making sure that that was the one that they played, even when he showed that he knew that people were game planning for him, and he kind of just refused to change it. And, there's also that time where he told Chris Middleton to miss a free throw while they were up by 3 so that the other team didn't have enough time to shoot the 3. But if he just makes the free throw, it's a 4-point game, and you don't foul. I don't get it. I really don't. I mean, I've sat here for hours contemplating this when it happened, when he was the Milwaukee Bucks head coach, and just thought to myself, how do you, even as a point guard who's as intelligent as you are, think that this is even conceivable? I don't know. But I digress. The Dallas Mavericks have decided that he will be their next head coach. And whether or not that's a good idea is really up to you. It's up to the people who listen to this podcast, listen to NBA podcasts in general, and people who like sports. And really, it's up to Luka Doncic. Because at this point in his career, Luka is really, really, really freaking good. I mean, potential top 15, top 10 player of all time good. The man's 22 years old. He's the same age as I am, and he's putting up unfathomable numbers. I mean, literally numbers that jump off the page and go, wow, why isn't anybody scoring? This man has 46, 10, and 15. Is everything okay in Dallas? And I don't think so. I really don't think so. I don't think Jason Kidd is the answer. But if Luka wants to make him the answer, he can. I'm not saying that Luka can completely make Jason Kidd look like a genius coach, but let's be honest, a lot of remarkable, talented NBA players can make up for the things that their coach lacks. We've seen it with LeBron teams. We've seen it with players that have played for Scott Brooks, that these players can overcome a little bit of bad coaching if they're talented enough. Can Luka do that? I don't know. And maybe this whole point is mute. Maybe Jason Kidd comes in here and he absolutely crushes it. But until that day comes, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to point out all the things that he does wrong, and hopefully he fixes those. Because who knows? He could have one of the greatest coaching seasons of all time, and I'll have to sit up here and eat my words. But I'll be happy to, because if that means Luka Doncic gets to have a good career, I'll be happy with that. I like to see greatness. I love seeing talented players go crazy in their home markets. Maybe not home market. I mean, he's from Slovenia, right? But until they get a NBA team in Slovenia, I guess we'll just have to see him dominate in Dallas. And that brings us on to our next coaching change. The Boston Celtics have hired new coach Ime Udoka. He was an assistant for the Brooklyn Nets for a while, and I honestly think an assistant for pretty much every successful NBA team in the last couple of years. Obviously not. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but he has a lot of credibility. He's coached under a lot of great coaches, and hopefully for the Boston Celtics, he can be their next Brad Stevens. why they why they promoted Brad Stevens and then tried to find a guy to replace them, I don't quite understand. Maybe you, I don't know, search for another GM and keep one of the best coaches in the NBA as a coach instead of bringing him into your front office. Maybe that was a deal that him and the front office wanted to do, but honestly, I don't really quite get it. But I digress. Ime Udoka is now the head coach of the Boston Celtics, and other than knowing that he's been in coaching and front office job interviews for the last couple of years, I don't know much about Ime Udoka. I don't know much about his schemes, but hopefully he can make Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown the stars that they deserve to be. Jason Tatum's already there. Jaylen Brown had a great year. And if maybe Brad Stevens can bolster that roster a little bit more, giving the Boston Celtics a little bit more bench play, a little bit better point guard situation, and hopefully Al Horford, who they just traded back for, can give them the valuable minutes at center that they lacked all season. I'm not saying that Time Lord wasn't great, but Time Lord couldn't stay in the game for more than 25 minutes without getting fouled. Is there any hope for the Celtics next season? Who knows? We'll have to find out, but until then, we will closely look at the Celtics' new head coach and watch him and make sure that he's doing all the right things, because that city is tough. And I don't want to go into the whole history of the city, but I think you and I can both agree that a coach in Boston can get a lot of flack for things that he might not have 100% control over. Pretty much in any Eastern Coast city. I mean, hell, go look at the tapes of Philadelphia 76ers fans booing Brent Brown for literally 5 years. I mean, I don't think that there's a person who's existed in Philly that has gotten more boos, except for maybe Ben Simmons. Ooh, he caught another strike. Sorry about that, Ben. Next up on our coaching carousel, we have Rick Carlisle joining the Indiana Pacers as their head coach, where he previously was the head coach from 03 to 07. Now, the Pacers have had a really weird last season from their last head coach pretty much having a falling out with all of the players and, maybe giving Nate Bjorkgren 4-year contract and maybe giving pretty much all of these new NBA coaches 4-year contracts. Not a great idea. But Rick Carlisle is proven, he's trustworthy, and if there's any organization that knows what Rick Carlisle is going to bring to the court, it is the Indiana Pacers. And they knocked it out of the park with this one. I understand why he left Dallas. I know that there was a GM and front office and player little bit of a scuffle between all of those together, but the Mavericks losing Rick Carlisle as a coach is not talked about enough. He's one of the greatest coaches in the NBA, in NBA history, really. I mean, he has the 2011 title with the Mavs tucked away in his pocket to be used whenever somebody gives him any discredit. He's a great coach. He's one of the first people that recognized that Kristaps Porzingis couldn't post up at all. And when asked about it in the media, he pretty much presented all of the facts. He was like, look, Kristaps gives us nothing in the post. He gives us absolutely nothing. He is a shooter. He needs to go outside on the three-point line and make a couple shots. And yeah, is it possible that the staff of the Dallas Mavericks should have probably went into a little bit of a developing mode, making Kristaps a little bit better of a post player? Sure. And maybe that's on the coaching staff. Maybe that's on the development staff. Or maybe that's just on injuries. Who knows? Maybe Kristaps has a lot worse of injury than we thought. And pretty much anything that goes down in the post is not for Kristaps. But until Dallas can sort that out, we have to talk about the Pacers. Now, I know they're not a popular topic to talk about. Not many podcasts are spending 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes on the Indiana Pacers, but I'd like to change that. They're a team. They deserve to be talked about, even if it is for just a little bit. The Indiana Pacers have had one of the weirdest couple of seasons from an NBA team that I know. And I followed the Miami Heat for years, where we just basically meddled in mediocrity until one day we were saved by LeBron James. The Indiana Pacers aren't going to get their LeBron James. They're not going to have that player that comes to them and absolutely transforms their franchise. And it's really just because they're in Indiana. It has nothing else to do with the fact that they're a good team. They are really well run. Their general manager makes great decisions. He wins trades. Their coaching staff now is incredible. And honestly, before then, it was incredible when they had Frank Vogel at the helm. They haven't really had any down years in a long time. Every all-star that leaves, they seem to get another one who can replace them. I think that the Indiana Pacers have had like 5 different most improved players in the last 10 years, 20 years, something like that. It's an absolutely insane number how many like underground unknown stars this franchise can get. And yet they seem to just toil in this 50 win or below kind of seasons where, yeah, they're in the 4 seed. Yeah, they're in the 5 seed. Yeah, they made the playoffs. Congratulations. And then they just get swept, or like with the LeBron teams that they faced, they just get outmatched and they're too young, or maybe their style of play gets a little bit muggy in the playoffs because Domantas Sabonis is just standing with his back to the basket while Malcolm Brogdon passes and bounce passes. And as much as that's exciting for the 90s and as much as that's exciting for the 80s, it does not win basketball in 2021. But the Pacers are hopeful that Rick Carlisle can change that. He had one of the top offenses ever when I think it literally was the greatest offense statistically of all time, the 2019-2020 Dallas Mavericks. They were absolutely insane. Their box plus minus was off the charts when Luka and Kristaps were playing. They were insane. And hopefully, after the tumultuous season that they had last year, Rick Carlisle can come in and change that culture a little bit for them. And I hope they do, because it's not fun watching NBA basketball when there aren't teams that are constantly trying to compete. It's not fun watching the 76ers lose like game after game after game after game. As a fan, why would you watch that? As a fan of the Indiana Pacers, I'm jealous that you guys have, maybe not jealous, I'm a Heat fan, we do the exact same thing, but there are other teams who are jealous of the fact that you guys will compete every single year. Even if you don't make it to the playoffs or you don't make it to the finals, I hesitate to find a team or a fan base that wouldn't kill for that opportunity. I mean, look at the Kings. The Sacramento Kings have not won a playoff. I don't think they've even made the playoffs in like a decade and a half. Can you imagine being a Kings fan? To all the Kings fans listening, I'm going to pour one out for you right now because it must be a sad life. I don't mean to like just knock on you and knock you down and make sure that but you know that De'Aaron Fox probably is going to leave, and you know that it's going to hurt, and you know that getting Marvin Bagley with the second pick in the draft is going to sting forever. But I don't mean to pile on the already pile of crap that your team is. I want you guys to succeed. I really do. I would love to see De'Aaron Fox break out next year, be an all-star. Buddy Hield score 24 points a game on 6 threes. I'd love to see Marvin Bagley finally play a lick of defense and get on the court and destroy the teams that he's really able to if he shows his athleticism and can actually put the ball in the basket a little bit more this season. They were one of the most fun teams to watch a couple of seasons ago until Luke Walton became their coach. So there's hope. There's at least a little bit of hope for the Sacramento Kings, just as there's some new hope for the Indiana Pacers. Because at the end of the day, winning is the goal, and Rick Carlisle gets you closer to winning basketball games. There's no doubt about it. And finally, for the last couple of minutes, I'd just like to talk about the NBA, talk about some things that I had come up with or things that I had seen on NBA Twitter that I really wanted to bring up. And today, that topic is Trae Young. I was one of the people in the 2018 draft when Trae was drafted to basically poo-poo him and tell everybody that no, this guy's not going to be good. He's a 6'1" point guard in the NBA who only can shoot, he can't play defense, and he's not going to be Steph Curry. And I was right. He can't play defense, well, unless he's guarding Giannis apparently, and he is a 6'1" point guard, but he does a lot more than shoot. He does a heck of a lot more than shoot. I've never seen since Steve Nash a guy who can actually just control the pace of the game other than like a Chris Paul who just absolutely knows what to do. He knows how to play the first quarter. He knows how to play the second, third, and the fourth. He's not scared to shoot. He's not scared to shoot. Not at all. This man would pull up from 35 feet with 2 seconds left on the clock, down 3, knowing that he's going to have to carry his team for the rest of the overtime when he makes it. And he thinks he's going to make it because you don't get that far and you don't become that talented without that belief in yourself. And we can see wholeheartedly that Trae Young believes 1,000% in Trae Young. There is not a bigger Trae Young fan in the world than himself. And that's how he got to where he was. Trae Young might be one of the most polarizing NBA players of the last couple of years just because of the hate. People have loved to hate Trae Young. And maybe it's because of his face. I love Trae Young, but you can't lie. The goofy hair and his face, the tiny frame, just his attitude and his demeanor, it's easy to hate if you're an opposing fan, but absolutely amazing to love if you're a Hawks fan. The Hawks finally have their guy. I mean, they haven't had a dude like this since Dominique Wilkins. I mean, tell me another guy in an Atlanta Hawks uniform other than Joe Johnson, and I'm not even going to count him because a couple of second and first round exits in the playoffs aren't going to get you cemented in Atlanta Hawks history. Maybe they will. I mean, let's be honest, it's the Atlanta Hawks. But Trae has had an incredible last couple of months. People were ready to write him off as a, good stats, bad team guy, somebody who wasn't going to lead your team to a playoff berth. He wasn't going to lead your team to be a winning team, but he could put up some cool numbers and make a few highlight passes that people would, tune in to NBA.com or tune in to ESPN to watch. Oh, look, Trae Young put up 28 and 7 and had a really cool behind the bounce back pass, and he made a really nifty layup and shot a 3 from 35 feet, and the Hawks lost by 22. No, it's not like that anymore. The Hawks are good. The Hawks bolstered their roster with talented players to surround Trae Young to make it so that he could succeed. When Trae isn't having a good game, who he can pass it to is abstractly better than what it used to be. He used to make bounce passes to people like Vince Carter when they're 42 years old. And I love Vince. He was an amazing player 10 years ago. And since then, he's just been a really decent role guy. And now that his shooting option is Bogdanovich and Gallinari, and he's got players in the paint to basically get the ball to whenever he wants, and Clint Capella and John Collins, these guys are the people you want to surround Trae Young with. Role players who are good and make sense around your star. And although they've missed time from a lot of their guys, the Hawks have been incredibly impressive. But it starts with Trae Young. And without Trae Young, I don't think these Hawks teams are even relevant. I mean, of course not. He's their best player. He's their all-NBA guy. He's their all-star, even though he wasn't for some reason this year. I know we have to snub a couple of guys every season, and Trae had a little bit of an issue this season before the coaching change of Nate McMillan, but he's absolutely incredible. He is insane, and as much credit as he's getting for being that now, I don't think that we gave him enough credit for his development throughout this season. There was an article I read that Nate McMillan basically talked to Trae and asked him, all right, we need to sit down and really talk about this, how you score in different quarters. There's a way to score in the first and the second and the third that's different in the fourth. There's a way to score that's different when the game's tied or when you're down by 6 or up by 8. There's 150 different ways to play basketball at the point guard position, and that's leaving out the millions others that there are. The point guard position is one of the hardest in the league to learn other than maybe the center position, because the point guard has to be on his toes every single night, making sure that every single guy gets their touches. I mean, unless you're somebody like Colin Sexton, who's just shooting like crazy, and somebody like, Tyler Hero, who, when the Miami Heat tried him at point guard this season, basically was like, oh, cool, I'm going to pass it to Bam and then screw off in the corner. There are guys who do that, and there are point guards who, whether we like it or not, aren't looking to set their teammates up. But Trae isn't one of those guys. Trae is almost a pass-first point guard if he wasn't so goddamn good at scoring. It's like if Steve Nash realized, oh yeah, I'm one of the greatest shooters of all time. I could probably shoot a little bit more instead of averaging 17 a game and 12 assists. Trae's like, nah, I can probably put up 25, 28, and also get 12 assists because I'm that damn good. And to digress, I just don't think that people give Trae Young enough love. Is he the new NBA villain? Time will tell, but at this rate, he is on his way to being one of the greatest point guards we have in this game. If you were to ask me 2 weeks ago if Trae Young was a top 10 point guard in the East or top 10 point guard in the league, I might not have even put him on that list. But now I think it's undeniable that he's at least top 10, if not on some people's list, a top 6, top 5 guy. And with that, I think it's time to wrap up the first episode. I just about hit the 30-minute mark. Look out for a little bit longer episodes in the future with some guests and hopefully some more topics about your favorite sport and mine, the NBA. My name is Gary Lee. I have been your podcast host. And if you'd like to follow me on Twitter or Instagram or YouTube to keep up with all of my NBA takes and NBA videos pending, check me out at GaryLeeNBA on all platforms. And please go to theathleteshub.org, where the real fans go, to check out some articles from some of my favorite writers and friends. We have a lot of good stuff going on there, and you should definitely check it out. All right, that's it from me. Hope to see you guys soon for another episode. I'm going to try to get these out pretty frequently. And yeah, leave me 5 stars, leave a like, write a review, comment, and share this with all your friends. I'd like to not be a bartender anymore. If I could do this full time, it would be a dream come true. All right, y'all. Have a good night. Peace out. And I'll catch you next time.